Hi YouTubers, today I want to share some interesting facts about Another World and Flashback, with both games being similar in looks and gameplay, released within a year of each other. It was interesting to research the team that made the games and dig up some interesting facts along the way. So let's get started. Another World, also known as Out of This World in some regions, and Flashback are often lumped together because of their similar cinematic gameplay styles, but they weren't made by the exact same people, though there is some overlap. Another World was developed by Eric Schuddy, a solo effort by the legend himself, with some help from Jean-Francois Freitas on music. It was published by Delphini Software in 1991. Flashback, on the other hand, was created by Paul Quizet and his team at Delphini Software. It came out in 1992, and while it shares the same publisher and a cinematic rotoscoped animation style, it was a separate project with a different creative lead. So, while they were both from Delphini Software and have a similar vibe, smooth animation, cinematic storytelling, and punishing difficulty, they were the brainchildren of different creative masterminds. Let's dig into the lore of Another World and Flashback. They are classics with a fascinating history. Let's break this down while you soak up the retro goodness like a tan man Terry on a beach in the Algarve. Another World, a one-man army, Schuddy designed, coded, and even drew all the animations for the game. He was inspired by movies like The Abyss and Aliens. Another World is often praised for its cinematic presentation, minimalist storytelling, and trial-and-error gameplay. It follows a scientist, Lester Chaikin, who gets zapped into an alien dimension after a particle accelerator accident. The game used rotoscoped animation and polygon graphics, which were groundbreaking at the time. Eric Schuddy also worked on other games such as Heart of Darkness 1998, another cinematic masterpiece, though it didn't quite hit the same level of fame. Paper Beast 2020, a virtual reality game showcasing Schuddy's knack for crafting surreal worlds. Cool fact, the Another World's entire source code fit onto 2 floppy disks less than 1 megabyte. Schuddy personally optimized it to the nth degree. That's about 120,000 times smaller than a Call of Duty install today. Another World used techniques that were rare for the time: cinematic storytelling. The lack of dialogue or text meant the story was told entirely through visuals and context. This was a bold move at the time, and left much to the player's interpretation. It's one reason the game is still studied in game design courses. One continuous experience. The game had no HUD, health bar, or obvious level transitions. This added to the immersive, movie-like feel. Dynamic animations. The rotoscoped animations weren't just for aesthetics, they created a fluidity to Lester's movements that made the game feel alive. Schuddy created the game in his bedroom on an Amiga 500 using a form of BASIC and assembly language for performance-critical parts. He didn't initially plan to work on games. Before Another World, he considered pursuing art and painting. The music and sound effects were minimalistic but effective. Schuddy wanted every element of the game to feel alien, including its auditory design. Developers of games like Limbo and Inside have cited Another World as a major inspiration for their focus on minimalism and atmosphere. Schuddy has commented that the success of Another World still surprises him, given how experimental it was at the time. What happened to Delphini Software? I hear you ask. Well, let me tell you. Delphini Software International was one of France's most iconic game studios during the late 80s and 90s. After its success with Another World and Flashback, it struggled to replicate those hits. Flashback 1992, developer Paul Quizet and his team at Delphini Software. The game is often considered the spiritual successor to Another World, although it leaned more into being a cinematic platformer with heavier emphasis on action and narrative. It follows Conrad B. Hart, a man who loses his memory and uncovers a sinister alien conspiracy. Interesting, aliens again. Imagine if they were going to visit one day, they would turn off the flashing lights before entering the atmosphere. And don't get me started on the recent US sightings. Unlike Another World, Flashback had inventory management, more combat, and voice acting. For its time, Quizet designed it to feel like a Hollywood sci-fi film, pulling inspiration from Blade Runner, Total Recall, and other classics. Other games by Paul Quizet: Future Wars 1989, a point-and-click adventure game. Motor Racer series. These arcade-style motorcycle racing games were a massive hit in the late 90s. Cool fact, in 1995, Flashback was listed in the Guinness World Records as the best-selling French game of all time at the time. Other cool facts: Another World has been ported to nearly every platform imaginable. From the Amiga to modern consoles, it directly inspired many later cinematic platformers like Limbo and Inside. Flashback, a remake, was released in 2013, but it received mixed reviews for its clunky controls and lack of innovation. A direct sequel, Flashback 2, launched in 2023, marking Conrad's return after 30 years. These games paved the way for other narrative-driven platformers like Oddworld and Prince of Persia. Eric Chuckies is considered one of gaming's auteurs, up there with names like Hideo Kojima. His work shows how games can be an art form. Both games are an essential part of retro gaming history, and their DNA is visible in tons of modern indie titles today. If you're feeling nostalgic, dust off that Amiga or grab a remastered version. They are still worth playing. I will leave you with some gameplay of Flashback. Although I am not that good at this game, don't hate the player, and don't hate the game. Thanks for watching and see you next time. That's awkward. Ouch, that hurt. Never going to play basketball with that jump.